You know, we all learn about history in school, but what if I told you there's a kind of hidden toolkit that historians use? A set of tools that lets them see the real story behind the big events. It's what turns a simple timeline into the complex, fascinating truth. So today, let's open that toolkit up. So let's just dive right in with a huge one, World War I. I mean, this is a conflict that totally redrew the map of the world. And the cause? We're often told it all started with a single gunshot. But really? Could something that massive, that world-changing, really hinge on just one moment? It sounds, well, a little too simple, doesn't it? And here it is. This is that super neat timeline we all remember from the textbook. June 1914, the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand. Boom. 1 month later, the whole world is at war. It's laid out like a perfect cause and effect chain, just a straight line from point A to point E. Yeah, as you've probably guessed, the real story is almost never that clean. To actually dig deeper and find out what was really going on, we have to start thinking like a historian. And that means we need to use their special toolkit for uncovering the truth. So, let's crack open this historian's toolkit. These are the basic concepts that work like a set of lenses. They let us see past the surface story and into the complicated machinery of how history actually works. Okay, first up, the most obvious one, cause. This is the trigger, right? In our simple story, the cause of the war was the assassination. It's the one action that supposedly kicked everything else off. And for every cause, there's an effect. That's the result. In this case, the effect was the start of a massive global war. So far, seems pretty straightforward. One cause, one effect. Simple. Then we've got sequence, basically the order that things happen in. Putting events on a timeline helps us see that flow. But, and this is a big but we're about to get into, just because one thing happens after another, that doesn't mean it tells you the whole story. And now for what might be the most important tool in the whole box, correlation. This is where it gets really interesting. Correlation means two things are connected, but one didn't necessarily cause the other. Okay, think of it like this. Ice cream sales and shark attacks both shoot up in the summer. They're correlated for sure, but eating ice cream doesn't cause a shark attack, right? There's a third factor, hot weather, that causes both. Understanding this difference is absolutely key to not getting fooled by a simple timeline. All right, we've got our toolkit. Now let's put these concepts to work on World War I. We're going to move way beyond that simple gunshot and start looking for what I like to call the long fuse. You know, the real deeper causes that have been building up for years and years. And this is where our toolkit really starts to pay off. See, the assassination wasn't really the cause. It was just the spark. The real danger, the powder keg, had been sitting there for decades. It was this explosive mix of Serbian nationalism and intense opposition to being ruled by an empire. Europe was already a tinderbox. This was just the match that finally lit it. And that brings us to this big idea of multiple causation. It is never just one thing. You had this tangled mess of political alliances that acted like tripwires, you had this frantic race for bigger empires, and you had these fiery waves of nationalism sweeping across countries. All of these were threads in a much, much larger web, and they were all pulling the world toward conflict. So we figured out it's not a simple chain of events. But how do historians actually piece together this incredibly complex web of causes? What's their process for connecting all those different dots? Well, it's kind of like detective work, really. First, they gather up all the evidence. They identify every possible cause and effect they can find. Then they build the timeline, analyzing the sequence of events very carefully. And finally, the most important step, they look for correlations, mapping out how all these threads that seem separate actually connect and influence each other. And this right here is the key takeaway. History isn't a neat little line of falling dominoes. It's a messy, tangled, intricate web. If you pull on any single thread, whether it's nationalism or alliances or imperialism, the entire structure shakes. Everything is connected. So, why does any of this matter to you? Because honestly, this isn't just about understanding the past. This toolkit is absolutely essential for making sense of the world you're living in right now. This toolkit, thinking about cause, effect, sequence, and correlation, it gives you a kind of superpower. It lets you look at any news headline, any major story unfolding today, and see the complex web of causes that are almost always hiding just below the surface of that simple story. It really all boils down to this one simple principle.
To truly understand any event, whether it happened 100 years ago or 10 minutes ago, you have to break it down. You have to analyze its causes, its effects, its sequence, and its correlations. That's the key to the whole thing.
So I'm going to leave you with a challenge. Think about a major event that's happening in the world right now. You know the headline story, the simple version. But now that you have the historian's toolkit, what's the real story? What's the complex web that's hiding underneath? Go look for it.